Hi, welcome to another video of this channel. In this video I'll cover Cube Escape Seasons, Cube Escape the Lake and Cube Escape Harvey's Box, since they're all very closely connected. They're about a woman named Laura Vanderboom, and together they paint a picture of the events that happened just before and after her death. However, these first few Cube Escape games were more about the general vibe and atmosphere, and the story wasn't completely set in stone yet. Seasons begins in spring 1964 in Laura's house in America. This is before all of the really strange things began happening to her. At this time she was living a relatively normal life with her parrot, Harvey. However, by then she had started to become depressed, and she found out about a place called Rusty Lake, a mental health retreat that she wanted to visit after finding their flyer. We now know the main reason she was depressed was because her mother, Rose, disappeared many years ago. Laura's mental state is reflected in this potted flower on top of the drawers. The flower looks unhealthy and about to wilt, but it's still alive. This symbolizes how Laura is depressed and close to being shattered, yet at least she's alive and more or less sane. However, sometimes Laura could briefly see the corrupted soul. This already hints at the forces in her mind waiting to be awakened and represents her mental illness. The corrupted souls are the physical manifestation of mental instability. Laura being able to see it shows that her mind was already vulnerable to that sort of stuff. Still, she carried on with her regular life, feeding Harvey and lighting the fireplace, but soon this would change. After 1964, Laura continued dealing with mental health problems for many years. It seems her depression continued to deteriorate, and the medication she was taking was making it worse, making her see disturbing things like the corrupted soul vision from earlier. But she never visited Rusty Lake. Part of the reason was perhaps because she'd found love. She met a man named Bob, a worker at the factory that made Harvey's bird food. They were truly in love, and because she wanted to be with him, she stayed in America. But finally, in 1969, Laura couldn't handle it anymore. When she won the free trip to Rusty Lake in a newspaper contest, she decided she had to leave and go there. She broke up with Bob and left the country, traveling to Rusty Lake, sending Harvey there as well in a box. This was a bad decision. The lake is a place that drives many people crazy with the strange sights and hazardous corrupted souls that roam it. And because of Laura's connection to it, it being her birthplace and where she lived as William, it was especially dangerous to her, as it could show her terrible truths and reveal broken glimpses of her past life. That's why Rose moved Laura away from the lake when she was just a baby, and why she told Harvey to protect Laura. So when Harvey realized Laura was returning to the lake, he knew he had to do something, but Laura had put him in a box, and as he was only a bird, there was nothing he could do. After some time passed, Laura arrived. The time passing was represented by the passing through of a spiral staircase. As was confirmed in Cube Escape Paradox, spirals in Rusty Lake represent the near future. For example, the spiral stone in Hotel shows Mr. Rabbit's near future as a dead person. The spiral cave painting in the cave shows Aldous' near future in the submarine, collecting the cubes. And this spiral staircase in Harvey's box allows the player to skip to the near future to when Laura arrived. Anyway, as we know, Laura owned a camera and had a hobby of taking photographs. It seems she used her camera to take pictures of Rusty Lake. But sure enough, even though she was able to take photos and make some good memories at first, she had a very bad time. She saw horrifying things like dead bodies and trees, and the lake probably reminded her of her past experiences as William. Finally, the worst thing happened. A corrupted soul surfaced from the lake and tried to attack her, perhaps drawn to Laura by her emotional state, but meanwhile, Harvey had teamed up with a friendly pigeon who managed to help him escape the box just as the corrupted soul was attacking. Although Harvey had struggled to escape a simple box, he was familiar with the forces of the lake and knew what to do. He did as Rose said and protected Laura, defeating the corrupted soul and turning it into a black cube. Yes, that was all the corrupted soul was. At the end of the day, it was nothing but a black cube, the physical projection of bad memories and past suffering, the total negative substance of their past lives. When the negative substance outweighs the positive too much, when too many cubes are black, then they form a corrupted soul. But even though Harvey defeated the corrupted soul, Laura was never the same after this encounter. Her mind was shattered, fractured, and her corrupted soul began to fully form. Of course, her corrupted soul always existed as the physical personification of her depression, but now it became a lot stronger. Anyway, Laura returned home, but she had already passed the point of no return. We next see her in summer 1971, with her mind beginning to collapse. By this point, the flower in the pot is completely gone, reflecting Laura's loss of sanity. She woke up in the middle of the night, probably because of one of her frightening supernatural nightmares. She tries to relax, but her visions, hallucinations, and corrupted soul make it impossible. She tries to listen to her favorite song, but her corrupted soul takes over and sets it on fire in the fireplace. She tries to stargaze. She suddenly has a prophetic vision of her own death. She tries cooking a shrimp, but it triggers flashbacks to her traumatic time at Rusty Lake. Even the harmless pot of soil becomes a malevolent hand trying to get her. Harvey starts producing a terrible, monstrous noise. Perhaps it's the sound Laura made as she struggled with her corrupted soul. As she continued taking the medication, her visions became even more vivid. She probably started having visions of William's life as well, and the scary, weird things he experienced. Randomly having memories from her past life and seeing herself as a different person must have been very confusing and overwhelming for Laura, and without Rose to explain what was happening, she had no idea what was going on and was driven insane. After all, one of the sacrifices was the brain of Albert, which was clearly very messed up, so this may have added to Laura's mental problems. The picture representing summer 1971 is Laura's photograph of the lake. Even though Laura had left 2 years ago, the lake always remained within her, destroying her. The moment she stepped into Rusty Lake, she became more corrupted soul than human. I said before that the timepiece we saw in Underground Blossom being lost was the thing that started everything. But maybe it wasn't an actual literal object. It could be just a metaphor for Laura's safety and sanity. The visions and nightmares were caused solely by her trip to the lake, and before that, her depression wasn't supernatural, it was simply because she lost her mother. Maybe Rose did leave Laura her golden timepiece when she left, but I'm not so sure that it actually had any magical defensive powers. Underground Blossom seemed to just be using it to symbolize her mental state. The thief represents the depression that made Laura break up with Bob. When Harvey tried to get the timepiece back from the thief, it could represent how he succeeded in defeating the corrupted soul but was still too late to save Laura. This order of events already makes sense without some mysterious, never-before-seen object being the sole cause of all Laura's sadness. After all, the timepieces were always symbolic, even in roots. Either way, it was a terrible cycle. As Laura's mental health deteriorated, her corrupted soul grew stronger, and as her corrupted soul grew stronger, her mental health deteriorated even more, and so on. Just weeks later, the corrupted soul absolutely took over her. Underground Blossom revealed that Laura began seeing tantalizing visions of Rose alive. It seems that this vision was the final straw that was too much to bear. After all, the root of Laura's corruption was Rose's disappearance.
Where did she go?
The corrupted soul was only made more obvious by the trip to Rusty Lake. Now things had come full circle as the visions themselves became about Rose. This was the last straw. Her soul was driven to full corruption and she could feel it happening. It ended with something a lot worse than a cassette tape being thrown into a fire. On 12th of October 1971, Laura died. The plant in the pot of soil has now become a giant dark hole. This symbolizes how Laura isn't just mentally ill, but literally dead. Just as she herself foresaw in summer, her corrupted soul killed her, but it can't exactly be called a murder though. After all, the corrupted soul was just another part of her, the embodiment of her trauma and suffering. The corrupted soul is Laura, just as Mr. Crow is Aldous. They're just different forms of the same person. That's why Laura's death was so weird to the outside world. It was both murder and suicide, as she lost the struggle against her own soul. And right before she died, she began seeing visions of a red forest, which we all know represents hell. Clearly, the true form of hell, or Naraka, is the internal mental landscape, the corrupted one, like what Laura has there. The insanity and madness of the brain is, in itself, the hell of Rusty Lake, the malevolent force. It seems like in the Rusty Lake universe, this had also happened to Vincent van Gogh. From Cube Escape Arles, it looks like he, too, visited Rusty Lake, causing his mental health to get worse and the corrupted soul to begin to manifest. The game suggests the corruption of his soul is what led to him cutting off his ear and finally shooting himself. Maybe the door of the cube opening represents his death, just like in the original Samsara room. Anyway, Laura went through the same thing as Van Gogh, but even after she died, her journey had only just begun. That's because Mr. Owl needed Dale and Laura for his Day of the Lake ritual, where one person dies and the other becomes Mr. Owl's successor. He needed Dale because of a prophecy he received in 1893, and he needed Laura as she was William's reincarnation. For some reason, William is important, since he and Aldous tried so hard to make the elixir of life, and when he died, they went to all the effort to revive him with an 80-year-long plan. It's not clear why he's so important, but it will probably be explained in Servant of the Lake. For the ritual, Mr. Owl and Mr. Crow used a magical machine to turn Laura into a human again. Then they used their elevator to remove all of Dale and Laura's bad memories, cleansing their souls and purifying them for their potential ascension. But they weren't able to remove Laura's memory of Rose leaving.
Where did she go?
And so the substance of her life was slightly heavier. The impurity of her soul caused her to be the one to die during the ritual, while Dale ascended. So Laura became a corrupted soul again. However, her corrupted soul was no longer an insane, bloodthirsty beast like it was before. She was much more controlled and rational now, since most of the anxiety and depression the corruption manifested from had been dealt with during the ritual, making her tamer and more herself. There was only one sorrow left, the original one, Rose's absence. But this time, Laura was able to calmly come up with a plan, like Caroline did. Laura travelled back to her house in America, which was now run down and abandoned. There she spent 8 to 9 years building contraptions and converting her house into a device she could use to resurrect herself, just like William. By 1981, she was ready to carry out her plan. You see, the only reason for Laura's corruption now was her mother being gone. To return to the human realm, all she needed to do was find Rose and experience closure. Apparently, this required her to find 4 objects from her past and connect them to her telephone to power it up and allow her to communicate with Rose. However, she needed to time travel in order to collect these 4 ingredients for her plan. To do this, she used blue cubes. Blue cubes are different from other cubes. The black and white cubes only let you mentally relive the past as it happened the first time without changing anything, like watching an old video. But blue cubes let you physically travel to the past and change the events that happened, overriding the timeline, like you're actually going into the video. With the blue cube, the past is never dead. It's not even past. This is just what Laura needed. So she spent 9 years using a blueprint to create a blue cube in her grandfather clock. Of course, clocks represent time. Laura used the blue cube to travel backwards and forwards through time. She changed certain things, only a small amount to get the stuff she wanted. But when she travels back in time to 1964, her reflection in the mirror is still the corrupted soul, as it was in 1981. Since Laura wasn't originally corrupted in 1964, this proves that with blue cubes, it isn't just her consciousness being transferred to her past self. It's actually letting her physically travel to the past as her future self, overriding the original timeline. This is the opposite of black and white cubes, which create new timelines that only your mind gets transferred into. Anyway, the first thing she does in 1964 is free Harvey from his cage, allowing him to leave the room so he could find the first ingredient for the plan. According to Underground Blossom, he put a lot of work into doing this for her. The next thing she does is remove the wilting, fragile flower. She replaces it with a cactus plant, which are known for their resilience and strength against bad conditions. The fruit of the cactus is the second ingredient, and it represents Laura's new determination and endurance, how she is now stronger and not as vulnerable to sorrow as she once was. However, now that Harvey had left, he wouldn't be able to save Laura from the corrupted soul at the lake. So next, she left 1964 and skipped ahead to 1969. There, she used knowledge from the future and remembered the seasons to ward off the corrupted soul that attacked her. With her science and progress, she defeated the hungry ghost and turned it into a cube by herself, without Harvey. Next, Laura jumped to summer 1971. There, she loosened the pipes beneath the sink, causing water to fall on the carpet. Once in fall 1971, fungus began to grow there, and this fungus seemed to trigger visions of the red forest, hell. It appears these were hallucinogenic mushrooms, symbolizing hallucinations, madness, and hell. The mushrooms are the third ingredient, representing the phase of Laura's life after she visited Rusty Lake, when she was becoming corrupted, when she was seeing visions, and when she went insane and became influenced by hell. Finally, in fall 1971, she lit a candle. The candle represents her life. It was lit during spring and summer, but by fall, it had gone out. This symbolized Laura's death. But now that she traveled back to fall and lit the candle, it reflected the possibility of her living a new life. This was the fourth ingredient, representing life and rebirth. By changing these small things, the four ingredients could be obtained in 1981. However, Laura made sure not to change any larger things so that important events like the Day of the Lake wouldn't be affected. In any case, after all this, she returned to 1981. Laura was back from her journey through time, and Harvey too had finished his journey. He returned to Laura with a cherry blossom, the ingredient from outside the house. It's the most important ingredient, which the entire game of Underground Blossom is based on. It symbolizes new life, purity, and freedom. By freeing Harvey from his cage, Laura was freeing herself from the hellish prison of her own mind, her corruption, and from the question of her mother that was tormenting her. The blossom also represents the maternal love of Rose, which is the goal of this whole plan, for Laura to find Rose. So Harvey bringing Laura this blossom is a very, very important event, and is probably why he is the player character of Underground Blossom. The four ingredients, the blossoms of love and freedom, the cactus of strength and determination, the fungus of illness and corruption, and the candle of life and rebirth, were turned into four juices that were then combined with the machine. Together, they formed a powerful fuel made of the four stages of Laura's life. It contained the complete sum, the complete summary, the total essence, the full substance of Laura's past, present, and future life. This substance of Laura's life was also represented by the timepiece in Underground Blossom. This further proves that the timepiece wasn't an actual object and was just used to represent things that are good. Laura used this life fuel to power up the telephone, turning it into some sort of crazy time travel teleportation linking device, causing Laura to enter a limbo and go all around through time, and then a white beam of light appeared and hit her reflection. It's very hard to tell what's going on there, as the developers probably left things vague on purpose. However, it's made clearer in Underground Blossom. The telephone of communication, powered by the substance of Laura's life, created a link that allowed Laura to find Rose. It led her to the direct nexus of time itself at the bottom of the lake, where Rose was. Just as a telephone can connect two people on opposite ends of the earth, this magic phone allowed Laura to finally contact her mother. In fact, throughout the entire game, we could hear a mysterious voice through that telephone. Originally, it may have been intended to represent a part of Laura, but now, with the context of Underground Blossom, it appears to represent Rose and her connection to Laura. We know Laura could see Rose in her visions, so the telephone probably represents that now, and that's how the telephone was used to find Rose. Anyway, Laura was finally reunited with Rose. Now that the questions about her mother were finally answered, Laura's soul was healed. She relived her entire life, but with the knowledge of her mother's presence, her corrupted soul disappeared. She became human again. She was reborn for the third time in a row. Unlike Albert, who cheated death and the cycle of samsara through artificial, unnatural methods, Laura was revived through love and spiritual mental closure. This is exactly what the lake is all about. So even though she couldn't be the ruler of the lake still grew to respect her endurance and understanding of the rules, and made her something like Caroline, the Lady of the Lake. This is likely also partly because of the reason why she was chosen as a candidate for the Day of the Lake ritual in the first place, but until Servant of the Lake comes out, we don't know. And so, with her mind freed of corruption, Laura returned to her house in winter 1981 and lived happily ever after, living a life without sorrow. That was the end of Laura's story. See, the very first game of Rusty Lake shows the ending of the story, but only with Underground Blossom and Servant of the Lake, the newest games, does it start to make sense. This shows how non-linear the storytelling of the series is. However, these first few Cube Escape games were more about the general vibe and atmosphere, and the story wasn't completely set in stone yet. Comment if you have your own theories. Like, comment and subscribe so you won't miss the next part. I know this part took a long time to come out. Thanks for watching!